So welcome. This is week 3/4, end of week 3, beginning of week 4 for ED 616. I chose this little birdie because this is what it was like when I woke up this morning. There was the sound of ice against the window, and we actually had a snow day here, although it was more of a freezing rain day than a rain day. And tonight and tomorrow we're probably going to get the ice. So I hope wherever you are that you are safe and cozy and not exposed to the elements like this cute little birdie. Okay, so I'm already appreciating the new format in terms of having neat things to share, questions for Lindsay and questions for the group right up front. You might want to take a little peek inside the neat things to share. One of the neat things that Wendy shared is that she's going to be involved in a MOOC, a massive online course offered around Indigenous education and reconciliation that's being offered out of UBC, and this is something actually that I'm also very excited about, and I have also enrolled in. I had been sending it out to all kinds of different people, but I don't know if I shared it with you guys, but I'm thrilled to see that Wendy is also interested in joining that group. And in fact, I think Kelly is also interested in joining that group. So that's kind of cool. It could be almost a side project. In fact, it could be your inquiry project if you wanted it to be. In terms of questions for Lindsay, I've answered what needed to be answered there. And questions for the group, the only question that seemed to be posed so far was whether you want to have a Facebook group or not. And I would say that if you do have a Facebook group, it will be totally have nothing to do with me and the course. It's really just for the cohort to communicate with. I've already had one person say they'd really rather not be involved in the Facebook group, and they worried that it might have something to do with their participation mark, and I am not interested in using it that way. I'm not going to use it at all. In fact, it'll be just for your cohort. In terms of looking at our week, super interesting posts after reading Carolyn Ellis's Heartful Autoethnography. I'm always really excited to assign this reading because for the most part, when I ask people if they read anything like this in their master's work so far, they have not. And almost to a person, this time around as well, people said that they actually really enjoyed it because it was so easy to read and so well written. And it's really interesting to see the way the conversation around autoethnography kind of shifted and changed as you started to read more autoethnographies, because at first it was very, very refreshing, but then there was also some questions that seemed to come up. And I think I appreciate that, and that's exactly what I kind of would hope would come up from this discussion. I have to say I'm a fan of good writing, and I do feel like as a social scientist, I have a responsibility to write things that are readable and interesting. I don't think that I have the style, perhaps, of a novelist, so I don't feel like I can do quite what Carolyn Ellis has been able to do here, but I do aspire to the idea, at least, of being able to write something that is so readable. So you read that together, and that made me really happy to have people reading that together to get a little bit of exposure to autoethnography that way. And then option A read some others, and in fact it seemed that most people were interested in reading Zabricki. I think that may be because so many people have some experience of either having students with diagnosed disabilities within their classrooms or in their families, or people that they know, and that seemed to be an interesting article for many, many people. One of the things that I did find also really interesting in some of the discussions around that was the idea of whether this is actually research or is it just sort of hashing things out the way one would in a mom group. One of you said, I thought that was interesting. The other thing that seemed really interesting to me in some folks' readings of Denzin was whether or not you had sympathy for the narrator. And that seems to be a pretty important thing, I mean, in a novel, but also in an autoethnography, that you want to actually feel some kind of resonance with the narrator. And if the narrator is someone that you feel is maybe being judgmental, that may be difficult to actually have that resonance. But I think that you all hit on some of the complexities of autoethnography, that it can be an incredibly useful tool for getting us to think deeply about issues and think about issues in different ways that we might not have if we were just faced with a graph, and that actually might move conversations along further than a mere graph or statistics about a topic, and that's maybe one of the reasons why this approach has been invented. However, I can also hear the rumblings of not quite sure how people feel about it, in that it feels so close to creating fiction as well. And I share that feeling with you, particularly waking up the other morning and hearing about the news south of the border where the president is talking about alternate facts, and that makes me very uncomfortable. I think qualitative research is highly useful, and just for the reasons that you have all listed. And I am much more of a qualitative researcher than I would ever be a quantitative researcher. But at the same time, I'm not so sure about creating alternate facts or veering so far towards fiction that we kind of lose hold of that objective thinking through what's actually going on around us. Or at least the attempt to be objective in what we're doing. Option B, you went on to post about your practical theories. Oh, and somebody has gone and posted since the last time I read. And what I'm really interested there is sort of helping you to build your proposal sort of step by step throughout the weeks. And you're doing a fantastic job in terms of that. In terms of next week, looking forward to next week, this is the new addition to the course, an idea of duo ethnography. This is the first time, oh, look at that, so many people have already posted. This is the first time that I have introduced this approach, and I really do like to have a number of different approaches so that you can compare and contrast them. I find that's a very informative way of learning about something new, is seeing how is it similar, how is it different from something else. So that's what you'll be going to be reading this next week, and I'm very much enjoying what I see so far. And I would say that I've also gone in and assigned your peer editors. So the idea behind this is that I find my students always write better if they have an audience of more than just me that they are thinking about when they are writing, and that it also helps to inform our own thinking about our own writing when we read other people's work. So send those all along to each other and send back some comments. So as I have said on the Moodle, if you could name your assignment with your first name and then your last name, ED616 short assignment, that would be really useful. I find I get lots of first assignment and no name on it, and then it means that I have to put a name on it, and that's a lot to do for 27 people, so it's really helpful if you could do that. And you can email it to each other that way, and then when you're actually going through your partner's document, if you could save it as your first name, meaning the editor's first name, back to your partner's first name, ED616 short assignment. I find that people get much better feedback if they're using track changes and comments on the actual piece than if they are using it, just writing an email about it. I was trying to remember why it was when I first created this course that I had actually had this peer editing, because you may be wondering, why are we doing peer editing and yet it's not like it's staggered so that they get peer editor feedback and then they send me a better product at the end just to Lindsay as an assignment. And one of the reasons why I would say that I invented this the first time I ran this course was that there's a tradition of being a critical friend, particularly in action research, but also in other forms of research, which is somebody who is of your peer group who can help do some troubleshooting for you when you're having trouble with your project or when you're thinking through your project. And this is one of the ways that we also can do this within our course, is to have you do a bit of peer editing when you're writing a short paper about something and mulling over some ideas, is to have somebody besides the teacher be part of that group that offers you some feedback. So it's the idea of continuing to create a culture of critical friends. And by critical I don't mean mean, I mean critical as in thinking about things with a critical eye and being useful in the work that the feedback that we give, rather than just saying looks great ! Which I know is very tempting to do, particularly if our classmates are doing great work. So there are your peer editors, all of your partners. Because we have an uneven number at the very end, Brittany, Victoria, and Thomas, if you could do it so that you are all Brittany sends to Victoria, Victoria sends to Thomas, and Thomas sends to Brittany, that would be really helpful. Okay. Thank you for all your work so far, and I look forward to your posts next week. Bye.